Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I want to share a story that's very close to my heart. A story about dreams, struggles, and a transformative encounter that changed my perspective forever. I still remember those early days, those moments when I would stand in front of the mirror, rehearsing lines, fixing my smile, hoping maybe, just maybe, someone would believe in me. There were times I would walk into a room filled with lights, cameras, and people who looked like they had already made it. And there I was, clutching onto whatever confidence I had left, praying that I would stand out, praying that I wouldn't be overlooked again. I didn't grow up thinking I'd make it in showbiz. In fact, I was just this simple girl with big dreams and no idea how to reach them. But there was always this fire in my heart, a quiet whisper saying, "You were made for something more." I would go from one audition to another, bringing nothing but a smile and hope, but often I'd leave with a silent heartache. Some would say, "We'll call you," but the call never came. You know that feeling when you give your all and still fall short? That was my reality for years. There was this one audition I can't forget. It was for a commercial, something small but important to me. I remember walking into the casting room, seeing all these beautiful, confident girls, and feeling like I didn't belong. I waited for hours, rehearsing silently, trying to look composed. When it was my turn, I did my best. I really did. But later, I found out I didn't even make the shortlist, and that night I cried, not because I didn't get the part, but because I felt invisible. I felt like all my efforts weren't enough. And it wasn't just one rejection. It was rejection after rejection. Sometimes it came in silence, sometimes in words that were hard to forget. Comments about how I looked, how I spoke, how I wasn't the type. I began to doubt myself. I questioned if I was really cut out for this industry. Was I dreaming too big? Was I just setting myself up for disappointment? But then something shifted. I started realizing that every no was teaching me something. Every closed door was redirecting me, not ending my story, just helping me write a better one. I had to remind myself why I started, not for fame, not for applause, but because I loved telling stories. I loved connecting with people. I loved making people feel seen, heard, and understood. There were moments when I almost gave up, times I told myself, maybe this is it. Maybe this is as far as I can go, but deep down there was always a part of me that refused to let go. I kept showing up. I kept trying, even when it hurt. And looking back, I'm glad I didn't give up, because those struggles became the foundation of everything I am now. People often see the spotlight, the interviews, the stage, but they don't always see the tears cried in silence, the prayers whispered in desperation, the countless nights wondering if I was enough. But I wouldn't change a thing. Because it was in those low moments that I found my voice. It was in the rejection that I found resilience. It was in the quiet, painful in-betweens that I found my strength. Sometimes the most painful beginnings lead to the most beautiful breakthroughs, and I say this not just for those who are dreaming of a career in the industry, but for anyone who's ever felt like they were overlooked, underestimated, or not good enough. Your journey doesn't have to look perfect. It just has to be yours. The struggles, they're part of the story, and the story, it's still being written. So keep going, even if it feels like no one sees you yet, because one day someone will. But more importantly, you'll begin to see yourself the way you were always meant to, and that kind of clarity, that's where everything changes. There came a point in my life when I had everything I once prayed for. The cameras, the shows, the applause, the spotlight, it was all there. On the outside, it looked like I was living the dream, but no one tells you how the dream can start feeling like a burden once you begin to fear waking up from it. There's a certain pressure that comes when you've reached a place you used to only imagine, and sometimes instead of celebrating it, you start fearing it. Fearing that one day it could all be gone. I would wake up with this quiet worry in my heart, this small voice that whispered, what if people stop watching? What if they forget? What if you're no longer relevant? I know it sounds shallow when you say it out loud, but it's real. That fear of fading, of being left behind, of not being enough anymore, it slowly starts to chip away at you. It sneaks in during moments of silence, in between projects, during interviews where you smile, but your mind is racing with doubts. There was a season in my life when I was doing so many things, hosting, acting, singing, constantly working, and I remember thinking, I need to keep going, I need to keep moving, or else someone else will take my place. It wasn't about passion anymore, it was about survival. I didn't want to lose the attention, the admiration, the validation. I was afraid of the silence that might come if I stopped. I tied my worth to the work I was doing, and it became harder and harder to separate who I was from what I did. People would say things like, "You're everywhere." And I'd smile, pretending to be proud of that, but deep inside I was exhausted, not just physically but emotionally, because deep down I was trying to prove something, not just to others but to myself. I thought that if I stayed busy, if I stayed visible, I would be okay, that I wouldn't feel forgotten. But you can't run forever. Eventually the noise dies down, the spotlight shifts, the projects slow down, and you're left sitting with yourself asking, who am I when no one's watching? That question haunted me. I realized I had wrapped so much of my identity around being known that I didn't know who I was without the fame. It's a painful thing to admit, that you've become afraid of losing something that once brought you so much joy. But fame is fragile, it's temporary, and if you build your entire life around it, you will constantly live in fear of the moment it fades. And trust me, it fades, not all at once, but slowly, like a sunset that slips behind the mountains before you even realize it's gone. But here's what I learned in that quiet space, in that season, where I was forced to slow down. Fame can bring you attention, but it can never give you peace. Real peace only comes when you know your worth is not tied to a title, a role, or a trending hashtag. It comes when you realize that being known by the world is nothing compared to being known by the people who truly love you, who see you even when the cameras are off. I had to unlearn so many things. I had to sit with the uncomfortable truth that I was scared of being irrelevant. I had to face the fear instead of hiding from it. And you know what helped me? Gratitude, instead of chasing what's next. I started thanking God for what I already had. I began to appreciate the moments, the people, the quiet blessings that didn't need to be seen by the world to matter. Slowly, I let go of the need to be everywhere. I stopped needing to prove anything. I learned that it's okay to rest, to breathe, to step back, that your value doesn't decrease just because your schedule does. And in letting go of the fear, I found freedom. So if you ever feel like you're afraid of being forgotten, I want to tell you this. You are more than your last project, your last performance, your last applause. You were never meant to be sustained by the spotlight. You were meant to be rooted in something deeper, something real. And once you discover that, no amount of fame, or the loss of it, can ever shake who you truly are. One of the most unexpected blessings in my journey has been the gift of truly listening. When I first started hosting interviews, I thought my job was just to ask the right questions and keep the conversation flowing. But over time, I realized it was so much more than that. It wasn't just about me talking or even just about the person I was interviewing. It was about connecting on a deeper level, about creating a space where stories could be told honestly, where truths could be shared without fear or judgment. Every guest that sat across from me brought a unique world with them, different struggles, different dreams, different perspectives. And as I listened, I found myself growing. I started to see life through so many different lenses. It was humbling, it was eye-opening, it was healing, because in hearing their stories, I began to recognize pieces of myself. My own fears, my own hopes, my own battles. I found comfort in knowing that I wasn't alone in my journey. There's something powerful about vulnerability, and I witnessed it over and over again. When people open up, when they share the parts of their lives that are messy, complicated, and real, it invites you to do the same, not just as a host, but as a person. I learned that the best interviews don't come from perfect questions, but from honest listening, from being present in the moment. It's in those moments that true connections are made. Through these conversations, I discovered my own resilience. I saw how others navigated pain, loss, failure, and yet chose hope, joy, and love. Their courage inspired me to face my own challenges with more grace and patience. Sometimes their stories would make me laugh uncontrollably, and sometimes they'd bring tears to my eyes. But always, they left me with something to reflect on, a lesson, a new perspective, or a reminder to be kinder to myself. I also realized that growth doesn't always come from big, dramatic moments. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, and slow. It's in the small things, like the way a guest's eyes light up when they talk about a passion, or the way their voice softens when they recall a difficult memory. Those moments taught me empathy. They taught me how to listen not just with my ears but with my heart. What surprised me most was how much I learned about communication. It's not just about speaking or asking questions, but about creating a safe environment where people feel comfortable enough to share their truth. I learned to pause, to be patient, to resist the urge to fill every silence. I learned that sometimes the most important thing you can say is nothing at all, just to be there, fully present, fully attentive. This journey through interviews also helped me understand the power of storytelling. Each person's story is a thread in the bigger tapestry of life, and hearing those stories reminded me that we all have struggles, triumphs, and lessons worth sharing. It reminded me that my story too mattered, even the messy, imperfect parts, and through it all I found healing, not just for myself, but in the hope that sharing these stories could heal others too. It became clear that when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create a ripple effect of courage and connection. We remind each other that we're not alone, that our experiences have meaning, and that there is always a path forward. Hosting interviews transformed me in ways I never expected. It made me a better listener, a more compassionate friend, and a more understanding human being. It taught me that growth is lifelong, and sometimes it comes from the simplest of acts, like sitting down with someone and truly hearing their story. So whenever I prepare for an interview now, I don't just think about what I'll ask next. I think about the person across from me, their journey, their heart, their truth, and I remind myself that this isn't just a job, it's a privilege, a chance to learn, to grow, and to connect in a way that touches lives, mine included. What I've come to realize over the years is that interviewing isn't just about asking questions and getting answers. It's so much more than that. It's about being real. It's about creating a space where people feel safe enough to be vulnerable, where they don't have to put on a mask or pretend to be someone they're not. Authenticity, that's the heart of what makes an interview meaningful, and it's something I've worked hard to nurture in every conversation I've had. When I first started, I was a little nervous. I thought I had to be perfect, polished, and always have the right thing to say. But over time, I learned that what really resonates with people is honesty. It's when you come from a place of genuine curiosity and empathy, rather than just ticking off questions on a list. I try to listen, not just with my ears, but with my whole being. I pay attention to the pauses, the shifts in tone, the things left unsaid. Sometimes the most important answers come from what isn't spoken aloud. I believe that every person I interview is more than just a subject. They're human beings with stories that deserve respect and care. So I treat each conversation like a shared moment, not a performance. I'm not there to judge or to force someone to reveal more than they want to. Instead, I'm there to walk alongside them, to hold space for their truth, whatever that may be. Being authentic also means being myself. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I share my own experiences when appropriate, and I'm honest about my thoughts and feelings. This openness helps build trust and breaks down barriers. When people see that I'm real, they're more likely to open up. It's a beautiful exchange, this dance of vulnerability and understanding. I've learned that some of the best interviews happen when you allow the conversation to flow naturally, when you stop worrying about sticking to a script and instead follow the heart of the discussion. That's when stories come alive. That's when guests feel seen and heard, not as celebrities or personalities, but as people. There's a magic in those moments of connection. When someone trusts you enough to share a difficult memory or a personal dream, it changes both of you. It's a reminder that underneath all the roles we play in life, we're all searching for the same things: love, acceptance, meaning, and that shared humanity is what makes every interview worth doing. Of course, being authentic isn't always easy. It means being vulnerable yourself. It means sometimes admitting when you don't know something, or when a story moves you deeply. But that vulnerability is what opens the door to genuine dialogue. It invites honesty rather than rehearsed answers. I also try to keep ego out of it. This isn't about me shining or getting applause. It's about shining a light on the person whose story needs to be told. It's about listening more than talking. It's about humility, recognizing that every guest brings wisdom, courage, and insight that I can learn from. Sometimes the simplest gestures make the biggest difference: a warm smile, a sincere question, a moment of silence to let someone gather their thoughts. These small things create an atmosphere of respect and care that allows authenticity to flourish. At the end of the day, my goal is to create conversations that matter, conversations that inspire, that heal, that encourage. I want my interviews to be a place where people can be honest about their struggles and their joys, where they can be unapologetically themselves, and I think that's what audiences connect with the most. They don't just want to see someone polished and perfect on screen. They want to see real people, real emotions, real stories, because those stories remind us all that we're not alone. So every time I prepare an interview, I remind myself to be present, to be kind, and to be genuine, to listen deeply and to honor the person sitting across from me, because when authenticity leads the way, magic happens, and that magic, that connection, that's what makes every conversation unforgettable. When the world suddenly slowed down, I found myself in a space I never expected, a pause that forced me to look inward. Before the pandemic, life was a whirlwind of events, projects, appearances, and constant motion. I was always on the go, juggling so many roles, trying to keep up with the fast pace of industry and the expectations that came with it. But when everything shut down, when the lights dimmed and the stages emptied, I was left alone with my thoughts. In that silence, it was both unsettling and strangely a gift. At first, it was hard. I missed the buzz, the energy, the sense of purpose that came with working. There was a deep uncertainty hanging in the air, and it was easy to feel lost. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I began to see things differently. I realized how much I had been caught up in chasing success, in trying to prove myself, not just to others, but sometimes to myself. The pandemic stripped all that away. It made me question what really mattered. I started to appreciate the little things, the quiet mornings, the long talks with family, the chance to slow down and breathe. It was in those moments that I found clarity. I realized that my worth isn't measured by how busy I am or how many projects I have lined up. It's measured by the love I give and receive, by the connections I nurture, and by the peace I carry in my heart. So to everyone watching, remember that your struggles are shaping you, your fears are teaching you, and your authenticity is your greatest asset. Embrace your journey and let your light shine across all borders. Thank you for being part of this story. This time also deepened my faith. When the world felt uncertain, my trust in something bigger than myself became my anchor. I learned to surrender, to let go of control, and to find comfort in the present moment. It was humbling to admit that I couldn't do everything, that it was okay to ask for help, and that sometimes the best thing we can do is simply be still. The pandemic also shifted my perspective on success. I realized that success isn't just about fame or recognition. It's about living with purpose, with intention. It's about making choices that align with your values, even if they don't always lead to applause. It's about being authentic and vulnerable, even when it feels risky. During this time, I also became more aware of the stories around me, stories of struggle, resilience, and hope. Hearing these stories reminded me that we're all connected, that we're not alone in our fears and challenges. It made me more compassionate, more patient, and more determined to use whatever platform I have to uplift others. The pandemic taught me that life is fragile and precious. It showed me that joy can be found even in the darkest times, and that sometimes the greatest growth comes from unexpected places. It encouraged me to focus less on what I don't have or what I've lost, and more on gratitude for what remains. Looking back, I see that this period was a turning point, a chance to reset and realign. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always pretty, but it was necessary, and it made me stronger, wiser, and more grounded. Now, as life slowly returns to a new normal, I carry these lessons with me. I try to remember the value of slowing down, of being present, and of prioritizing what truly matters. I remind myself that it's okay to say no, to set boundaries, and to care for my mental and emotional health. Most importantly, I've learned that peace isn't found in external achievements or the approval of others. It's found in embracing who you are, flaws and all, and trusting that you are enough, exactly as you are. This shift in perspective has changed everything. It's not just about surviving a difficult time, but about growing through it, about finding light in the midst of uncertainty, and about living with a heart full of hope and gratitude. And that, I believe, is the greatest lesson we can carry forward.